Hello and welcome to Get Rich Slow, the podcast that challenges the conventional get rich quick ideology and instead explores what authentic success really means and how you can achieve it. I am Hannah Martin. I am the founder of Talented Ladies Club, and today I am joined by Advita Patel. She's the founder of Comms Rebel, and we're going to talk about hustle culture. Hello, Advita.
Hi, Hannah. So good to be here today.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. And before we get into the topic at hand, I would love to ask what success means to you.
Such a good question. I think about this question frequently, actually, because I think it's something that we don't often reflect on when we think about our own successes. And for me, when I do this work fairly frequently, like I said, it's about fulfillment for me. It's about fulfillment of the work that I do. It's fulfillment of my own happiness. It's fulfillment around the life that I live, and being content with what I do as well, and being happy, I suppose. And I use that word pretty loosely because I know happiness is quite subjective, and it just depends on everyone's different circumstances. And happiness can mean so many different things to different people. But for me, it's definitely around fulfillment and being fulfilled in the work that I do. And can do that, like I said, with a good heart and with purpose.
Excellent, thank you. And before we get into talking about hustle culture, what's your background? Why is this something that you're aware of? What is it that you do? How do you help people?
So I worked in corporate life for almost 20 years. And I've always worked within the communications field. So I worked in organizations specifically on internal communications and employee experience. And those who are not familiar with internal communication, it's basically trying to help leaders and organizations connect with their workforce so they perform to the best of their ability for the organization. And they do it, again, as I said, with my kind of success with purpose and fulfillment. And that's what I did for 20 years. And then I realized that I wanted to take control of my own destiny, which I know sounds like a really big thing, but I was a bit tired of having to keep proving my worth, to keep progressing in organizations. I wanted to have flexibility in the way I lived my life. And I wanted to help more people to make change in organizations so they can, like I said, help people thrive. So I decided to leave full-time employment and set up Comms Rebel. And then later I have a second business called A Leader Like Me as well. So I can help more people and make sure that I share my advice, my experience, and help others thrive in their work.
Excellent. Thank you for that. So why do you think that is a big opening question? I'm just going to go straight in at the top. Why do you think that we attach success to monetary values rather than value or purpose?
That's another great question. I think we are now in a world where we're surrounded by people showing off. And I say that again with the quotes, with the social media that we're around us. And I think that's one tangible thing that you can attach yourself to, the monetary value. So I earn 6 figures a month, I earn 7 figures a year. And it's not something to be shamed about, by the way. Money is not something that we should ever feel shame around at all. And I feel like we need to do better, especially as women, with finances and with money and not be embarrassed about it. But I'm also very conscious that we attach our own value to monetary success. And if we're not earning these 6 figures or 7 figures or not turning, more than whatever amount per month, then the society around us and the comparison we make to others as successes, because we now have more access to that, makes us feel that we're failing. And if we don't demonstrate our worth with money, then how can we demonstrate our purpose? Because it's not a tangible thing. So I think a lot of people get attached to that. I want to show that I have a lot of money and I'm success and I'm succeeding because I've got this really nice car and this nice lifestyle and I travel first class everywhere. And I'm showing off about that because that demonstrates my worth in this industry that I'm in and shows my success. It's really difficult to show your success when you're fulfilled, right? So it doesn't come across as interesting or exciting or you're successful. that you're just living a life that makes you happy, because it doesn't demonstrate. People attach happiness to things, materialistic things, because that's what we see all the time around us. And I think the pressure on showing that and seeing others in our industry showing that makes us feel that we're not good enough to belong in that space because we're not turning over certain amounts of money, which is a shame.
Yeah. Do you think that comes then from social media and people being much more visible on something like social media and building businesses from visibility? So rather than, let's say, pre-social media, you might have been a business owner in your town and you might have worked with another business in your town, helped them, and they'd gone and said to other business owners, wow, I worked with Advita, she really helped me with my turnover, she helped me with my, retaining customers, and word would spread like that. Whereas today we're much more into self-promotion. And so often we can then build a business without actually any track record, but we go and show financial success as a sort of a way of building a reputation. Do you think that's probably maybe something to do with it?
Oh, 100%. Social media, as much as I love it, has also brought comparison to the forefront of everything that we do. And like you said, before social media and before we had our own platforms to demonstrate our visibility, we did work in local areas. Our reputation was spread through the deliverables that we did for that client, and then they, that you said, told somebody else, and that's how we grew as a business. Nowadays, to your point, you don't really need that anymore. You can create this kind of story and narrative around yourself without much evidence that you are a success in that space. But as long as you can talk a good talk and you have the ability to manipulate social media to an extent, then you probably, can be quite a good success, which is why lots of people have been burnt through different people who say they can help them with X, Y, and Z, but end up they're just, may have read a blog post on it or half a chapter of a book and think that they're experts in that space, which is a difficult thing to prove when you have an online presence. Whereas if you're doing it in person and it's through reputational deliverables, then that's a little bit more impactful. But social media has allowed us to be who we want to be, public facing, without much question around our authenticity.
And do you think, you touched on this earlier, that once one person, particularly someone influential, sets something like money as a goal or a standard to measure themselves by, it becomes something we all then follow. That becomes almost like a culture or a sort of a trend, that unless you are measuring yourself by this financial marker, then you're not successful.
Yeah, definitely. And it is influencers that do that. It's influencers that show off about their life, about the incredible lifestyle that they're having because of the money that's been afforded to them. And it's true, money will have brought that kind of lifestyle from them, but people don't see other benefits that they have that we don't have access to, sponsorship and partnership and all the kind of other additional income that they have coming in. They may have second or third income streams that we just don't see or they don't talk about, yet they say that by doing this is how I'm earning money. And like I said, just before that, you don't know what is true and what isn't true on social media unless you know that person and you get to know them and you spend time with them and you speak to their ex-clients about their, who they are and what they deliver, because you can sell a dream online. And some of these influencers sell that dream. And if you're not thinking about money and you're not turning over the six figures that deems you as successful, then internally our confidence can really be knocked by that, and we think we don't belong in that space, or we're not successful, or we start thinking, what am I doing that's not right? What do I need to do? Why are these people succeeding and why am I not succeeding? And comparison is a big thing online nowadays because you see it.
I think it's really interesting. I've investigated the multi-level marketing industry for a number of years, and I'm fascinated by how it works. And what I've seen is some people who've done very well in this kind of environment on social media have come from the MLM industry and were successful there, because a lot of the same practices, it's that I call envy marketing. It's like, look at me and my, they'll do a casual one, like, oh, I've had my nails done, and then nails will be on like an Audi steering wheel with like a handbag in the background, casually show the logo off. Yeah. But it's always, it's selling the idea that financial material success is the only kind of real measure of value, but then also tells you that anyone can have it if you just do X, Y, and Z that they do. Join their team or buy their programs. And then when you fail, because you're set up to fail, because ultimately they're not telling the truth. They're not telling the truth often about their own success, but they're more importantly not telling the truth about how that success is supposed to have happened. And when people fail, then they are shamed. They're saying, like, you didn't want it enough, you didn't try hard enough, you were too negative. And you're placed in a lose-lose scenario, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. You know, that is their job. You know, these MLM folks who are experienced in this space, that's their job, right? To sell that dream, they've been trained in their mindset in how to do that. You know, they use some of those learnings and make others feel guilty for not succeeding. And it's that shame that can sometimes put you in a very difficult position when you work with individuals like this, because you think, well, and they sell the story, don't they? They say, I was here, I had nothing, I was bankrupt, I was on my last £10 or £5, I was living on the street. 18 months later, look at me. You know, if I can get from there to there, why can't you? And it's like, yeah, why can't I? They were homeless and they were this, but it is a story that they're sharing, and they may not, you know, I'm not saying that they're all telling lies or whatever, you know, but they're definitely stretching the truth in some of these spaces. And we have to be mindful of that and do our own due diligence on the individuals that we choose to follow, or we're allowing to influence our way of working, and make sure that we are doing our research, because there are some genuine people out there who have succeeded from nothing to where they are today, and they should be applauded for their successes. You know, do your research and make sure that they are authentic, and you can look up company records. You know, are those companies actually are turning over multi-million-pound passive income that they often talk about? You know, you can check it out. You can look at Companies House, you know, or any of these kind of accounts. If you're a limited company, which some of them say that they are, you can look up the annual accounts and see if they are turning that over. You have to be smart enough to do that and be conscious enough to do that. And I'm not saying don't trust people, but trust with caution is what I always say with these things.
And what I would say, and I do think you need to do due diligence, if I can say it properly. and I always, you know, I find it interesting. I don't research people who don't do this, but if someone goes online and makes a financial claim, then I check it out, because I think if you are going to go public with something, then you deserve to have that checked up on. And often I find that many of these people will claim to have a track record of successful businesses, and I have yet to find any one of them that has done. When they do have financial success, it's selling the dream of achieving the financial success they previously were not maybe truthful about. But what I would say as well is, I think it's quite hard to do that much research, because these people have very, very good testimonials, which aren't always true, I have found out, but it's very difficult to tell the truth. What I would say is, I would caution anyone who listens or follows someone who has that kind of messaging. If someone is telling you that I turn over this much money, I would question why they are putting that message out there, why they have that as a value. And if, as the other day, I was served an ad by someone, and the ad was a photo of them flying business class with their child, and I was like, what? Why is this an ad? Why? I couldn't understand why I'm supposed to see that and then and take an action. And I would say, you know, I have holidays. I have very nice holidays, and I do lovely things for my family. That is never online, because it's my private life with my family. And you should never buy something from me because I have gone on holiday somewhere. I don't see the connection. And so I think it's very hard. I say it can be hard to do due diligence, but I would question somebody who uses as marketing lifestyle type stuff, or talks about what they make, because I don't think that's a value that I personally would follow, and I don't think it necessarily accurately reflects the success most people are striving for, which is quite a long-winded way of saying it.
No, and I agree. You know, I think, and like I said to you before, Hannah, you know, there's nothing wrong with having a target of how much money you want to earn and being comfortable with that. Where the problem starts is where you are allowing yourself to be influenced by somebody's lifestyle and you feeling inadequate because of that. and it's stopping you progressing, and it's stopping you taking chances, and it's stopping you believing in yourself. If that is happening to you because you feel like you can't compete to that lifestyle, then this is when I say to you, you need to stop. You need to remove yourself from that situation and do your due diligence and make sure that you are being fair to yourself in all of this. Because if you're not being fair to yourself, then you're going to do yourself injustice. And it's those people who sell that dream and that lifestyle that can cause you to feel that you don't belong in this entrepreneurial space, and you're constantly feeling, like you need to do more. And I don't think that's the case at all.
And I think, and this is why I want to get into this idea of hustle culture, that often when you follow this kind of path, you are told that actually success often comes from doing things that are outside your values, that you should work harder or chase more people. And then this is where the shame of failure comes in, because if you're not prepared to do these things over here, then you're told that's why you fail. So what do you think about the idea of hustle culture, that you should do whatever it takes to succeed?
I honestly, the hustle culture thing, it doesn't work. It really makes me feel a bit icky, if that's even a word. I'm not a big fan of hustle in itself. I think, hustling gives a very negative connotation to some of the stuff that we do as individuals. And you need to be, again, as somebody who feels like they may be hustling, it's almost taking a step back from that and understanding the purpose of what you're trying to do in the world that you're trying to serve, and understanding that purpose. So like I said to you before, when you said to me, what does success look like to you? I when I first started out in my own business, and I do, have to admit, as a business owner, I often will make jokes around hustling. I said, I hustled really hard today to get this over the line. But it's, I am very conscious of the word that I'm using. And you do need to think about what is success to you? When is it enough? Like, what is it that will help you ensure that you are living against your goals and objectives and ambitions in your life? And what does that mean? And removing that kind of, I need to earn this amount of money every day, every week, every month to show like I'm a success. It's taking that monetary side away. And first of all, thinking about, what is my purpose as an entrepreneur in this space? And what is it that I am trying to achieve? And how am I serving my clients and the people that I want to work with? And what does that look like? And once you're clear on that, then, the hustling side of what you do kind of disappears, because it's just way of life. You're living to your purpose, living to your values, you're living to them ethically and morally, and you become a bit like Teflon, really. So it doesn't really matter what anybody says to you, that you should be doing this, this, and this to be a success. You can confidently say to that person, actually, I'm content with what I have. I am living to my purpose and I'm delivering good work. And as far as I'm concerned, that is success for me. And I think you can confidently say that. If you don't know that part of you, that purpose and what drives you, then it's going to be hard. And that's when you do fall into that kind of hustle kind of culture, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, and I think that's true. And I think when you have that, you say, that purpose and that goal that's aligned with your purpose, and you've set the steps towards that, and you've practiced good business practice, there's a sort of calmness and a strategy and that you follow. And sometimes not everything goes according to plan, but you can step back and you can identify why it's not working. But I think when you lack those things, that's when the danger of trying different tactics, that hustling comes in. It's like, oh, I haven't got any business. Oh, I know what, I need to do a course on Instagram, and then I need to be doing reels every day. But that's not bringing it in, because actually it's just one tactic rather than a kind of strategy. And then you try something else, and that's when maybe you do fall prey to the some maybe doing things that are outside your values, because you become desperate and you don't understand why it's not working. Yeah,
panic sets in, and I will speak on my behalf here and say that I fell for that. When I first started Comms Rebel, I was doing all sorts of courses, Instagram courses, and because it just, you nudged me to remember that I was like, oh, why, I set up Comms Rebel in January 2020, thinking that 2020 was going to be the best year for a business for whatever reason. And then 9 weeks later, COVID hit, and everything that I had lined up stopped, and panic does set in. And I see all these incredible, successful entrepreneurs who are working in the communications field talking about their clients and earning this and doing that, panic does set in, because I wasn't very clear at that time, because I'd been shocked, I suppose, by the global pandemic in terms of what did I stand for as a business owner. So I did sign up to so many courses and programs and training, and I was flitting from here to there to here to there, not really understanding the value that I was bringing to the people that I was working with. And it took me a while to really calm myself down and sit down and spend time understanding myself, where my knowledge gaps were as a business owner, and what I needed to do to solve that, and have as that sense of purpose in terms of what is it that I'm trying to achieve in this space that I can bring with my unique qualities. And that does take time, and it does take energy, and it can cause a little bit of panic because you feel like you're slowing down and you're not working at pace. And when you have the world looking at you in terms of, is she going to succeed or not, that puts additional pressure on you. Because I wasn't made redundant from work. I chose specifically to leave full-time employment to set up my own business. So I left a very well-paid job to do this. So I felt this pressure on me to succeed immediately, because people were, judged me, I suppose, in leaving something that was safe and going into a slightly riskier world. And when the pandemic hits, it could be beyond the pandemic, anything that goes in your world that shakes you a bit, you can end up flitting from one thing to another and doing 101 things and not really doing any of them well. And that is a risk that you do need to be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also, you talk there about kind of needing to prove yourself quite quickly and speed. And one of the things that I've learned, I started Talent Days Club. I started planning it 10 years ago now. And around the time we launched in 2013, there were a few other companies that came up at the same time. And some of them appeared to, or did grow much more quickly than Talent Days Club did. Mm-hmm. And of all those companies, we are the only ones still going today. And not only we're going, but we are more profitable and bigger year on year. That growth has been slow. At times early on, it was too slow maybe, and there were things I could have sped it up if I'd had, if I'd known what I know now then. But I always see myself like the tortoise in the hare and the tortoise in that race. And so sometimes there is a pressure on us, I think, especially exacerbated by social media, to have visible success quite quickly. Yeah. And when that doesn't happen, we feel we're doing something wrong. But what often we don't understand is that if you grow a business too fast, you're not making mistakes early on when it's small and things don't matter. You're making mistakes where there's more money involved, there's more visibility on those mistakes. Mm-hmm. It is in many ways good to grow slowly over time, because you bed down success. Yeah. And you tailor and prune your business as it grows. So I don't always think that this idea that if you're not a success really quickly, you're not going to be a success is always very true. And I think, I always admire the bravery of someone like you. I did this myself as well. When you start you leave something secure to start something, and it does take a lot of nerve, and it takes a lot of nerve to not be swayed by this hustle culture and by this thing, like these measures. Because at times in the past I was as well, like, this business is doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not there yet. There's something wrong with me. But actually, in time, with hindsight, which is always wonderful, I can see the path I took was right, but you've got to have you've got to have your blinkers on. It's really easy to get distracted by what other people are doing, and comparison is a thief of joy, as I say frequently. So you do have to train yourself to have your blinkers on. And I always say to folks that I work with, because I'm a confidence coach as well, and part of what I do is to try and build confidence in people to live their dreams, and to live them to what their version of that dream is, not what other people's version of that dream is. Which is to your point, it's really easy to see what other people are doing and think, well, I should be doing what they're doing to be a success. But my coaching always says, what is it that is a success for you, and what does fulfillment feel like to you, and what do you need in terms of your confidence to get there, not what other people believe you're lacking. Because everybody will have a view and an opinion, and that they're allowed to have a view and opinion. You can't stop them having a view and opinion about you. But as my mum used to say to me, it's not really anyone's business what other people think about you.
and you need to just remember that, which is really difficult when you are, when I call myself a recovering people pleaser, because I want everyone to like, or did want everyone to like who I was and be part of that community and that group and show off of look how successful I am. And you do have to retrain your brain to think very much about you and your family and what it is that is important to you specifically and the people that you love and care for. And that is the most important part of running a business, because if you don't have that, you will be pulled here, there and everywhere and lose focus and feel distracted and think that you're a failure.
I think, and that leads me really perfectly into my next question, because I wanted to ask you about ego, which I think is connected to that. And I personally believe that we have responsibility towards other people, and if we have a position of influence or power, and a business owner we do, we need to act for the greater good. Whereas it can be easy and very tempting, especially if we're successful, to get caught up in our own success and our own ego. And I think, and I like what you said there about, about the community that we're in. The community can be family, it can be our friends, the physical community around us, the community people we serve. But I think ego is a really important thing to keep awareness of and check, because it's very easy to unconsciously forget that and get carried away. So what do you think about ego?
I mean, the ego thing is really interesting because we all have an ego. We all do, whether it's outwardly out there or inwardly, within us. But I am a little bit, I will always say to folks that there's absolutely nothing wrong with a humble brag. To demonstrate, you should be proud of your successes, and you should be able to put yourself out there and talk about your successes comfortably, because you can inspire others who may be reading or watching you, and you may, they may relate with you, and that's okay. I think it's important, to your point, to keep yourself in check and keep yourself grounded and surround yourself with a community who can keep you grounded. That's a really important part of who we are in terms of our growth. And I lean quite heavily on my community to make, to bring me down at times and say, what are you trying to do here? And, that doesn't sound right. And being honest with me, and that friendship circle or that community of other entrepreneurs or business owners who you trust is critical to our successes, because we can get carried away. If we're having a great year or a month or whatever, and we're kind of putting ourselves out there and we're saying this and we're saying that, and we just kind of lose ourselves a little bit in all this kind of egotistical communication, I suppose, that we put out there, that can disengage us from the work that we're trying to do. And we do need to be self-aware enough to know the balance between that humble brag and, going out there and not listening to what our clients are saying or what the people that we're trying to serve are saying, and making sure that we are being honest to ourselves about why we're writing something or posting something or sharing something. Like, what is that purpose? What's that call to action? What is, what are we doing? And that's what I would say about ego. So we all have it. It's nothing to be ashamed of at all. It's just making sure that we are checking in with that ego on it. And egos can make us stubborn as well. And that's another thing to remember. So there is one thing I do want to say, that there's absolutely no shame in asking for help from anybody. And sometimes when we don't see the influencers around us asking for help or doing things on their own, or looks like they're doing things on their own, we think that we should do things on our own and we should be asking for help, or we should be doing this or sharing our vulnerability with anybody because nobody else is. I can guarantee, and you will know this, Hannah, that 99.9% of those successes that we look at and we see will have a huge amount of help behind the scenes to be who they are. They'll have coaches, mentors, business support, backups, all the things that you don't see. So don't allow your ego to stop you asking for help or asking those curious questions about how do you become a success like that, because they will all have help.
Absolutely. And also what I think is really important is listening to criticism. So, sometimes I'll get someone will send me an email going, ask you a question about something, or saying something's broken, it's like my site, and they're always kind of quite tentative. I'm really sorry to say this, and I'm really pleased that they do, because without knowing that, you've got no idea. If you're on broadcast, if you're putting stuff out there, you have no idea how that is received. And I always think, for every one person that has the courage, it does take courage to come to you with an observation or a criticism, there are at least other people thinking that, but telling other people about it. Yeah. And I think also it's good to remember that we're all trying our best, hopefully, but we don't always get everything right. So I think it's also really important to even with ego, to be able to kind of take things sometimes that might be quite hard to hear and be thankful for them, because they do help you get better.
Yeah, and just be mindful around that as well, in terms of who is that person giving you that feedback, and how are they giving you that feedback, and is it going to help you improve by them giving you that feedback? Because again, on the other side of that, Hannah, we live in a world where people feel like they can say anything that they want anonymously to an individual without the consideration of that person's background, what's going on with them or whatever. And people can be mean. I've seen it online. So, feedback is critically important, but even more so critically from your community and the people that you're serving and your clients and your customers and people like that. So be very mindful about the kind of feedback they're giving you, and is it going to help you improve, and being self-aware enough again to understand that and not getting defensive, to your point, if somebody does say something about that. So it's what Brené Brown says, isn't it? If anybody is a fan of Brené Brown, she says if they're not in the arena getting their kind of butt kicked at the same time, or have been there, then balance the criticism with what they're saying, because it's easy to comment on somebody's thing if you've not been there yourself and understand some of the pressures that they might be under.
Oh yeah, there's a big difference between constructive criticism or observation but also there's obviously a filter, and if it's narcissist or bullying, or the complete kind of weird emails that I get from people who read some of my articles around the world, and there's I just discount those straight away. But what about representation? Do you think that by being stuck in this one-dimensional idea of success and view of success, does it unknowingly discriminate against groups of people?
Yeah, 100%. It definitely does. The privileges afforded to some are not afforded to others. And sometimes we forget our own privilege, and we all have privilege. It doesn't matter who you are or what your background is. We all have a privilege of some sort, and it's recognizing that privilege. So I don't have any dependents. So I don't have children that I need to worry about, or anyone relying on me for money or anything like that. So I can take more risks in my business than somebody who may have a family who do have to pay, their kids' fees and look after their kind of dependents or caring responsibilities, even if it's not children. And that is you have to be quite mindful about that when it comes to business as well. And which is why I always try and encourage people to share some of their stories internally that demonstrates a little bit more about who they are and shows the authenticity of who they are, because that will help people relate and resonate a little bit more about what they're trying to do in the world of work. And I think we need to move past this polished version of ourselves that, a minute of our lives that we share on Instagram or LinkedIn or Twitter, and be comfortable enough to talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we might be facing. Because the more real we are, the more representation we can bring into the world of business. Because people go, well, if she can do it, or they can do it, or he can do it, then why can't I? I've got similar circumstances to them, and I can. And this is where comparison is useful. When you see somebody who looks like you, who has similar experiences to you, who understands your lived experiences to an extent, that is empowering. And that can give you the power that you need to make that choice about your life. When you don't see people like you who have got similar experiences like you, then you think that is an unachievable goal, which is why I'm always encouraging folks to be visible in the world of business and talk about some of the stuff that they do, because you never know whose life you might change.
Absolutely. Have you heard of the term conflict entrepreneurs? And this is people who use conflict and pitch people against each other to help them achieve their goals.
I've heard, I've seen elements of this conflict entrepreneurship, which is just, again, it just makes me think, why are we doing this? What is the point of this? And it's distraction tactics. Again, these kind of things is a huge distraction tactic to what we're trying to do. And we're not here. None of us are here forever. And we're here for a very small amount of time in comparison to the existence of this universe. And spending that time, energy, effort in that kind of conflict situation where you're pitching each other up against each other, it's just such a pointless tactic, and it's exhausting, and I don't agree with it, and I don't understand why we feel the need to do this, to be honest. I just think there's enough for everybody. We should be supporting each other as much as we can, and doing that pitching, I don't agree with it.
Yeah, I think it comes from like a sort of scarcity point of view, whereby there's only a certain amount of pie, and if you have some of that pie, I have less. But I do see it used by, and again, I think it's very much part of the hustle culture, using it to get the trust of your audience, and to get your audience kind of almost like, like a kind of a team behind you, because they then feel a need to defend you. And I find it quite interesting. I have been used on this, like people have pitched, battles against me and used my name as a kind of, and I completely disengage from it. I don't respond. I don't play any part of it, but I do see it quite a fashionable thing. And like you, I don't, there's no point. We're not going to like everybody. We're not going to have the same process as everybody. But that doesn't mean to say you necessarily have to point that out or pick a battle with an individual.
No, not at all. I always, one of my favorite sayings is, you can't be everyone's cup of tea, otherwise you'll be a mug. And I say that to myself every single day, because you will have people like that who will inadvertently bring you in without your permission, and their followers, try and engage you in a conversation that is pointless, and you have no part to play in that, because it makes them feel better about who they are, not necessarily you. And you get sucked into this drama, unnecessary drama, that, like I said before, is distracting you from the work that you need to do. And it's each to their own. You do you. If that's what helps you when you want to do that, you do it. But don't bring me into this chaos that you're causing to demonstrate your worthiness, because your worthiness is not measured on my own time and pressure on working with you in that way, because that's not how I do things. And that's important to remember.
And I immediately think, when someone uses that tactic, whether they involve me or not, they bring someone else in, and I just think, you talk about stadium, we're not in the same stadium. How you do business and the kind of business you're pursuing is nothing like how I want to do business. So, you may see us as competitors, but we're not, because like that's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, definitely.
So thank you, Advita. We've talked a lot about what's wrong in the world today. But to end on a positive note, if you could wave a magic wand and make a big change, maybe one big change that we could all live by, that would make us pursuing our goals easy, but more satisfying and more possible, what would that be?
If I had a magic wand, I would love everybody to have a bit of self-belief in themselves and self-worth, and build their self-esteem. Because I think if everybody had that, then we probably wouldn't live in the world that we're living in right now, where there's just so much anger and hate and disruption, and people just feeling a bit meh about everything. And I think when you have self-worth and self-belief, and you are confident in who you are, then that can make a huge difference to how you put yourself out there in the community, and makes you a happier person. And you want to help others, right? When you have your own self-worth and self-esteem and confidence as well. So if I had a magic wand, that's what I would love to do.
I love that. Do you know what? I probably would have thought of saying that, but now if someone asked me, I would say the same thing. No, I do, because I think like a lot of what we've talked about today comes from an absence of that. And I always think that unhappy people make other people unhappy, and vice versa. So thank you. I love that self-belief. If anyone wants to find you, connect with you, how can they do that?
So they can find me on Twitter, on LinkedIn, and on Instagram under my name, which is one of the privileges of having a unique name, Advita. It's Advita _P on Twitter, or Advita P on Instagram, and then you can just find me on LinkedIn. I'm normally on there. Or you can come and visit my website, which is commsrebel.com. We share lots of resources, and I share lots of things around confidence as well. So if that is an area that you are struggling with, then we have lots of free resources for people to access as well, because that's quite important that we make these things accessible. They shouldn't be hidden away.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time today, Advita. I really enjoyed our chat.
Thank you, Hannah. Thank you for inviting me.